I'll say it again. As soon as any area is ready for you to move into, you need to get into it.
This is the Be Great Podcast, building people for the electrical industry and beyond.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. We got the second part of Matt Burleson's Be Productive episode. In this part, Matt talks about pulling work forward. And while you're listening, I want you to be thinking about three things. Number one, learn about a big mistake that I made while running my first project. And number two, when is the best time to start working in an area of the project? And number three, how to minimize chaos on a project. There's also some great discussion about urgent versus important. Be sure to catch all parts of this episode so you don't miss out. And as always, there's no better day than today to be great.
Something I hear you talk a lot about is pulling work forward. I've shared this story with a couple people, but there was a project that I was running, and there was a second floor space, the only space in the whole building that wasn't going to be finished. Just some strip lights, three-way switches, no drywall, nothing. And I neglected that area the entire project. It was available the whole time, and I focused on first floor and third floor because they had all the stuff going on. And my big thought the whole time was, well, those are the ones that are going to get drywall. Those are the ones that I'm going to get covered up in. So I need to focus on that. So at the end of the job, when I'm trying to finish first floor, trying to finish third floor, now the GC is like, what is going on with second floor? It's been available the whole time, and I'm embarrassed to even admit it, but I didn't even have material there for this floor. And looking back, I'm like, well, I could have had the material there. I could have had a plan built, everything done, and then I could have called and said, hey, anytime it rains and there's two people freed up, I have a whole entire second floor that could be done. It puts so much extra stress on me. It puts so much, the general contractor, I'm sure, had questions on me, and so just a lot of things. So that scenario always plays out in my mind over and over and over again. But for someone who hasn't been doing this for a long time, or someone who hasn't made these mistakes, what are some ways to identify those areas? How can you look at an area and know this is an area that I need to be focusing on pulling forward?
Well, you really just need to know like you said, what happens in that area. If that's a shell space, then along with every other area, as soon as that area is available to work in, you need to get into it. So a big push on the job we're on right now, we've almost accomplished it. We just got inside a couple of weeks ago, is we're going to destroy the site work. We are just going to attack the site work, get it as far as it can possibly be before we ever move inside the building. So I'll say it again. As soon as any area is ready for you to move into, that makes sense. That doesn't mean you don't have to coordinate with your GC,
right,
and make sure that you're not hosing another trade. But you need to understand what goes into it, who else is going to be there and when. I mean, if you're looking at the schedule and they don't pour the floor for 3 weeks and there's hardly any other work going on in there, maybe you can get all terrains in there and just knock the crap out of your overhead.
Right.
Just looking at going through your schedule and finding holes in it where there's not a lot of work going on, or maybe they're all in the south half of that and you're in the north. Well, maybe you can do all the north stuff, then you guys can flip-flop and do the south stuff. So the other part of pulling work forward is the most important time. We talk about this at Bart's too, but there's work that's not urgent, not important, right? So I don't want to go through the whole thing because I'll probably mess it up. But so for instance, like block rough on a project, you got CMU, and we prefab basically all of our block rough, right? So the job we're on, we started in October, just doing temporary power and stuff like that. And by the end of November, all the block rough prefab was 100% done. We have it all palletized and in totes and ready to go. May, the second week in May, the block rough starts. So, I say all that to say you can't start it too early,
right,
especially on prefab and stuff like that. So now the stuff's sitting on the job, ready to go in. There's no big rush. Oh no, they start in 2 weeks. We've had it completed for months and months. So as far as prefab and stuff like that, the sooner you can start building it, the better off. And then a lot of times on a lot of prefab, you can bill for that stuff too.
Right.
Once you get it on site. So
I think that's the big urgent and important thing, right? So block rough is urgent when it's right in front of you, and I think everyone knows what it feels like to be in a fire, and oh my gosh, I got a prefab stuff. The masons are moving on 6 different walls. It's a mess. That is urgent and it's important at that point. But the fact that we can take a lot of that work and move it to a time when it's not urgent in a controlled environment, all kinds of different things. We can more effectively do it. We can more safely do it. And we can actually focus when the block rough comes on not missing boxes or putting them in a quality manner, making sure that they're at the right height and stuff, where if you're scrambling to put boxes together and it's all urgent, you're more likely to put a switch at 50 inches rather than 42 inches. And we all love to cut block up later. It's one of the most enjoyable things. So I think that's a huge example. And I think what Matt said was as soon as the work can be done, and if you think I think there's probably an opportunity, I'm sure you'd agree, on every single project of something that could be done. So if you're on a project and you're not really sure where to look, call Matt, call Steven, call Brian, call any of these guys, and they can help you identify those areas. And I think that's where a lot of younger foremen get caught up, is just don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't really even think about that second floor the whole time, and now that I saw it, once, I'm like, well, I'm not gonna let that happen again. So I think that's a big thing, is ask people for that input about what should be done. I think too is one of the things that maybe about that area was I followed the general contractor's schedule too much. It wasn't even on their schedule. It was a core and shell space. They didn't even have my stuff on there, and for some silly reason, I didn't even think about it. And how often do the general contractors in their schedule take into account all of our actual work?
never.
Yeah.
It's never all in there.
Yeah. A lot of it's left out of there, and I think I've made the mistake of thinking, well, it's not in there, so it doesn't need to be done right now. But that's just such a false way of thinking, I think.